Alright guys, let me know if you cannot hear the Stationeers audio. There should be some music playing in the background. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start back from the beginning here. I had some practice last night. So I am using a creative mod. So I will need the authoring tool here. Press F9 to spawn that in. Let me turn off my hunger real quick. Play. All right. Gonna place an airlock right here. Let's go ahead and put an RTG. Seal this up. I almost forgot. Oh, whoops. I did not mean to build it that way. I just wanted T-junctions. We want the advanced airlock circuit board here. And let's go ahead and seal that up. Let's close the external. Wrong door. This is the one. Internal. Let's set these all to 0. All right. And that is programmed. Alright, so I made myself a room. And in this room is where we're going to do our little experiment. Now, a couple things to keep in mind is that Mars air is very thin, so we will need many passive vents to help increase the flow of air. So on the roof, I'm going to build a matrix of passive vents. I think I have this in the wrong position. So I'm going to create a 3x3 matrix. You might not actually need this many passive vents, but I'm just doing it for illustration purposes. Sorry, for demonstration purposes. And the idea is that we will just use a single pump and minimize the resistance. All right, so we have our matrix of passive vents. It looks ridiculously large. I don't think you'll ever need that many passive vents. But let's just go ahead and use that many. Why not? All right, now I need to plan where I'm going to put my pumps. And we'll put it right there. I'm going to go ahead and add another RTG. I want to make sure that the cable networks are separated from each other. The only reason I'm doing that is so that I can monitor the power consumption of my atmospheric system independent of the power consumption of the airlock. Again, the airlock has nothing to do with the purpose of this live stream. It has nothing to do with the purpose of our tutorial, nothing at all. It's just there so that I can get in and out of the building. I do need to consider where I'm going to put my logic circuits a little bit later. Let's go ahead and move these cables somewhere a little bit more accessible. That should do it for now. So I know I have cable access right there. Let's continue building this pipe network. Now we are not going to use any filters. We are just using the filtration as a pump. Technically, I do not need to connect the output, but because that's going to give us an error, I need to connect it to something. So I'm going to go ahead and connect both outputs together. And this is going to feed into our pipe radiators. So the the filtration unit is going to suck air from Mars. And it's going to fill up the pipe radiators. And I don't think you're going to need as many pipe radiators as I'm going to use here. But the more pipe radiators you'll use, the faster it will exchange heat. And again, this system is both going to heat and cool our base. Alright, that is more than enough pipe radiators. You will never need that many for a small room this size. I also need an exhaust. And my exhaust will be a series of what I call fluidic resistors. And I like to use valves. And what these are going to do is they're going to provide resistance on the gas flowing out of the system. That way, when I turn on my pump, the pipe pressurizes. So that's where all the gas is going to come out. And I need to connect this to my source. Eek. Alright, so right now I can manually operate this. And you can see it's already starting to get warm in here pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and check the conditions inside this pipe. You can see that the pipe is pressurizing. And because it's warmer outside, it is also heating up the room. You can see outside that there's a lot of gas escaping out of the vents. Now the reason I use a lot of vents is what I don't want to happen is having all the gas coming out of one single vent, because it might pressurize the cube, the volume that's right outside these windows. And if for some reason the pressure is too high, it might damage my windows. And I do not want that to happen, so I spread it out. Now it's actually cooling off outside, so I actually want to turn off my filtration. I do not want to get it cold in here. So the atmospheric component of the system is pretty much finished. All that's missing are logic circuits. So I want to have this automated. I do not want to manually operate the system. So that means that I need to use two sensors, one sensor inside the room, which will measure the temperature inside the room, and the second sensor to measure the temperature outside. Because we have to consider that if the conditions inside the room are not good, I need to change it. If it's too cold inside, I need to warm up the room. If it's too hot inside, I need to cool off the room. But if the conditions outside are not correct, if the conditions outside is bad, I do not want to exchange heat. For example, right now let's see, the temperature outside is it's in the negatives. And so if it's too cold inside the room, I do not want to exchange heat with outside, because that will cool off my room. And so I only want to warm up the room when it's warm outside and when it's cold inside. So I need to kind of plan out what the circuitry might actually look like. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into draw.io and plan it out a little bit. All right, so we need a condition where the temperature outside is warmer than a certain target temperature. So I'm going to call this sensor outside. And let's go ahead and put in a logic reader. And let's wire this up together. Okay, whatever. So let's pretend this is a logic memory. And let's make a target temperature of, I don't know, 18 degrees Celsius. All right. We can convert this later into Kelvin. But not so fast yet. We need another condition which checks the inside temperature. And we could say, well, let's look at if our inside temperature is less than our target temperature, we want to turn on our filtration. So we have two conditions here. And both of these conditions have to be true at the same time. Now I can actually flip this around to the other side. I can put it on this side. All right, so I have these two conditions. Both of these need to output a true in order to turn on my filtration. These together. And then we can have a logic writer, or possibly a batch writer. And this will go to the filtration. Now, another thing you could do here, instead of using logic compares, we could use logic subtraction. So if I replace these with logic subtract, then what's going to happen is that when the output value of the logic subtract is greater than or equal to 1, and when the other logic subtract is greater than or equal to 1, then our resulting multiplication is also greater than or equal to 1, which turns on the filtration. And so that means that when the temperature outside is greater than or equal to 19 degrees Celsius, and the temperature inside is less than 19 degrees Celsius, then our filtration will turn on. So if it's too cold inside and warm enough outside, our filtration will turn on, and it'll begin pumping into the pipe radiators. And the benefit of having this system is that on the flip side, get this, on the flip side, on the reverse, let's say it's too cold outside, it's colder than 19 degrees Celsius, then our logic subtractor becomes negative. Or rather, in this case, if it's less than 17, if it's less than or equal to 17 degrees Celsius on the outside, then the output of our logic subtract is less than or equal to -1. It becomes negative. And so if it's too hot on the inside of the base, this other logic subtractor also becomes negative. And what happens when you have a negative times a negative, you get a positive. And so if it's cold outside and it's too hot inside, this will also turn on the filtration. So either both positive or both negative. Double negatives cancel each other out in this case. And so the filtration will turn on if the temperature outside and the temperature inside are on opposite sides of 18 degrees Celsius. Now, I might want to rotate some of these components in a way that I will actually have it set up in the game. So maybe I'll have something like this. Just to make it compact, and I don't know what's going on here. Alright, so basically this is going to be our circuit, and we're going to try to replicate this in our game. And this will control all of our temperature. This will regulate our temperature when it's too cold or when it's too hot at the right time of the day. So first I need to actually plan where I want to put my sensors. And let's just go ahead and place them, let's see here. Let's just put it here. Well, actually, come to think about it, I don't have good wall space for my logic circuits over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put my circuits on the outside. And you can put it on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and go outside. I could probably stick it on this wall somewhere. Let's start with our logic writer. Yeah, I think I'm going to be wrapping this around the wall here. Put a logic math there. And then another logic math here. Just put it there. Logic reader here. Go inside real quick. Actually, let me finish the cables. I feel like this is on the wrong side of the wall here. It should be on this side. It would make better sense. But that's okay. So there's going to be another logic math on this side. Alright, let's go inside before I get so tangled up here. So it's not going to quite look like what we have in our picture. What the heck happened here? Let's go ahead and turn that off. I'm just going to go through the window. I'm supposed to have the logic math here. We're supposed to have a logic memory here. Logic reader here. Yeah, this doesn't quite look right. Okay, I feel like I'm tangling up my cables a little bit here. Nothing wrong with that, right? Okay, this is definitely looking tangled up. Not too bad. This has to go inside. Okay. Let's bring this to the ceiling. And then this one has to go outside. Which means I need to cut that off. Yuck. I don't want them to share the same network. Yeah, I'm sorry. It looks a little tangled up, but I think I have it all wired correctly. It's basically still this, but a little more complicated looking. It's more like a pretzel version of that. So now we could put our sensor here. That's our outside sensor. And we need an inside sensor. We'll just put it right there. Now let's go ahead and program this. All right, so 0 degrees Celsius is 273.15. So that means 20 degrees Celsius is 293. So that's 20, but we want to set it to something more like 18 degrees Celsius. So we will subtract 2, or quite possibly we can just set it to 290 Kelvin. This is supposed to be the inside. Just double check to make sure I have that wired correctly. It looks correct. Alright, so this is a gas sensor. Temperature, turn that on. It's 199 Kelvin on the inside. And this is for the outside. Gas sensor, temperature. It's 197 Kelvin outside. We want this to be a subtract. This goes to the logic memory. We're negative 93 degrees away from where we want to be. And this is a positive. Do I have this right? Positive. Yeah, right. Because one's a negative, the other's a positive. A positive times a negative is a negative. It's too cold inside the room, but it's not warm enough outside to turn on our filtration. So we'll have to wait till sunrise. And we're going to multiply these two values together. Oh, I did not just do that. All right, so that's a corner. I just need to connect power here. Let's get the three-way. Nope, no three-way here. Okay, let's just use a cable junction then. There we go. Negative 6,000. Oh, and I almost forgot. The logic writer. So in about 20 degrees, the filtration should turn on. So we have a total power consumption right now of about 105 watts. And this does not include the airlock. It does not include the airlock. When the filtration turns on, it should consume about 110 watts. About 5 degrees remaining. Two degrees. One degrees. Half a degree away. And there it goes. It turns on. And as you can see, it's getting warmer. If you look at the top right corner of the screen, you'll see the external temperature, that is the temperature in the room, is getting warmer. Now I'm going to go ahead and drop some oxide. When it gets warm enough, the oxide will begin to melt. Let's get about 3 of these. Here we go. Oxide is melting. Turn off my suit, take my helmet off, and now I am breathing in the oxide air. Sorry, the air that's produced for the oxide. It's not too cold in here. I'm going to go ahead and dump my flare outside. And again, the total cost is about 110 watts. Much cheaper than using wall heaters and wall coolers. When it gets too chilly outside, the filtration should turn off. So if I try to turn it on, it turns off. It's because the temperature outside just dropped below 17 degrees Celsius. And so even though it's still a little bit too cold inside the room, it is too cold outside to be exchanging heat. And by too cold, I mean it's not safe for plants. It needs to be at least 15 degrees or plants will die. And we've set it to, I think, 17 degrees to provide a few degrees. We want the target temperature to be at least a few degrees above the minimum. That allows for some fudge factor. It allows basically for some air. I'm going to go ahead and change the sun period. And you can see that the pipes are slowly depressurizing. We're still at about a half a megapascal here. And with an ordinary day, it takes a while to depressurize. The good news is that while it's depressurizing, the temperature inside the pipes will remain approximately at equilibrium with the room temperature. Even though it's negative outside, the pipes are still relatively warm. And so when the sun comes back up, we shall see if the temperature will get warm enough in here to start growing plants. Watch me damage my suit trying to pick this up. Okay, maybe not. Now you don't want to plant anything yet in the hydroponics trays because the water is still cold. It needs to be at least 15 degrees Celsius. The sounds that things make. I think it's warm enough here. Let's plant some soybeans and some tomatoes. I wonder if cable junctions make noise. Something's making noise here. I wonder what it is. Battery makes noise even if there's no power going into it. So it looks like 16.6 degrees is 290 Kelvin in the game. Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. 17 degrees. It's rounded to 17 degrees. So now I'm a little bit curious. The target temperature that we set gave us 16 degrees Celsius. So what if we increase the temperature by... Let's make it 292. So we can make it warmer in here. So setting our target temperature to 292 will keep the base at about 17.5 degrees Celsius. So just as a recap here, we have a 3x3 matrix of passive vents. You will never need this many. And that gas gets sucked in by the filtration unit. The filtration unit is only acting as a pump. And it will pressurize this pipe here, and it will go to the pipe radiators to exchange heat between the Mars air that's being pumped in here and the room. And again, these valves are only acting as resistors, which will help the pipes maintain pressure. Because on the other side here are a bunch of passive vents. There is no back pressure regulator, there's just a pump. A pump with passive vents on one side and passive vents on the other side. And the only thing that allows the pipes to become pressurized highly, like to about, close to a megapascal, depending on how long the pump stays on, is the valves. Now, I haven't proven to you that the cooling works. So far it works for heating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a bunch of flares and I will light it up in the room. And we will see if the system not only is a good base heater, but is also a good base cooler. And also as a recap, the logic circuits here, let me show you one more time what the plan actually looks like. We have an outside sensor, an inside sensor. These are, of course, gas sensors. We have a logic writer that reads temperature from the gas sensor, and it throws it into our logic math, which is put on subtraction mode, so that when it's hotter outside than 18 degrees Celsius, or in the case that I have it in the game, I think I set it to, did I set to 18 degrees Celsius? Something like that. I put it 292 Kelvin. So I set it to 292 Kelvin. And that's our logic memory. Just leave it okay, 292 Kelvin. So that when it's warm enough outside and it's cold enough inside, then we have positive values of greater than or equal to 1 multiplied together gives you a value that is greater than or equal to 1. And we have a logic writer that tells the filtration to turn on. If it's cold outside, so we have a negative here, and if it's hot inside, we have another negative, and so we have a negative times a negative, which is another positive, and that should also turn on the filtration. So it works both ways. It works both as a heater and a cooler. So we're going to go ahead and prove the point. So as you can see, it's 17 degrees Celsius. I'm going to light some flares and make it hot inside here. And the filtration has turned on. But if it gets too warm outside, the filtration's not going to turn on. Because when it's warm outside, the air doesn't work very well as a coolant. So unfortunately, there's only proper times to heat the base or to cool the base. Obviously, the best time to cool the base is at night, and the best time to warm the base is during the daytime. I'm going to go ahead and leave 3 flares on. And I want to see if the system is powerful enough to cool the base in spite of these flares being kept on. I'm going to go ahead and push my luck a little bit by lighting 4 flares. And we can see that the cold air outside appears to be stronger than the warm air inside. So the system is powerful enough to overcome 4 flares during the nighttime. What happens if we light 10 flares? I have 10 flares lit right now. And so as you can see, the system can even handle 10 flares. And you pick these up before they die. And now I want to test all 20 flares. And of course the sun is coming back up. And the air outside I think is a little too warm. The pipe is heating up. So during the daytime it cannot handle 20 flares. So there are limitations. And again, the cooling or heating system is only consuming 110 watts. It's definitely much more efficient than wall heaters and wall coolers. But as you can see, it's very expensive on resources. And there you have it. So the system is done. I think I'm going to stop the tutorial here. If you need to see how this was done, feel free to rewind. I wonder if this will go through the chute. Nope. I wish it did. Like this thing. Let's play some basketball here. Huh. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And I'll catch you on the next one.